pronunciation. Okay, so a quick introduction, as you're all aware of this, I'm sure. Accurate pronunciation is such an important part of learning any language, obviously English. So the way your speech sounds can have a really big impact on whether people understand you or not, and what your and what impression they might have on you as well. If you're going for a job interview or being interviewed, you know, these are also important. So yeah, the tricky thing, the difficult thing in getting knowledge quickly already. Hopefully there'll be some new ones for you, and it will help you to practice faster in English, above all pronunciation. So listen to yourself, and this, it might sound obvious, but sometimes when you're thinking about what you're saying, you're not necessarily concentrating on your pronunciation and your accent as much, so it can be hard to do two things at the same time. So I would divide it, have a time where you're just listening to yourself talk about something easy, so you don't have to think about the content. So then, so you're concentrating on actually communicating and the pronunciation for the communication and the sounds that you're making, not content. So if you can't hear pronunciation problems or nobody else is correcting you, that's often a problem. If you have no native English speakers to correct you, or if you are, even if you do come to the UK or Canada, people don't always have time to correct you, or people might worry if they might be rude to you if they're correcting you, all sorts of different reasons. So you need to listen to yourself and take responsibility for your own pronunciation and improving it. So on one solution, try recording your speech as well. That helps you to really listen. If it's hard to listen when you're actually speaking, record yourself. So later when you have time, smartphone, computer, whichever device works best for you, and listen to it. Obviously make notes of what you think and any areas you can improve on. Comparing it also with native speakers, online, obviously YouTube, podcasts, you can kind of hear a native speaker say something and you can repeat it back, record yourself saying it. So that should help. Slow down. This is a big one. When I'm teaching, I'm always asking my students to slow down. They're very excited. Everybody wants to learn English and to prove they can speak well. So a lot of my students have a lot to say, like I'm sure you do. But it is important to, not speak too slowly, but especially on maybe trickier subjects, or if you really are now thinking about your pronunciation, slow down so that you can take that extra time. You can take that extra time to work on it, and it will help you be more fluent. Speaking quickly does not mean speaking more fluently. No, I would say get a good pace, calm pace, and then you can always work up from that. And speaking too fast can reinforce bad habits as well, and it can make you sound nervous, even indecisive, like you don't know what you're saying, you're confused or stressed. So for sure, nice and calm. It also gives you time to breathe properly. This is something we don't really think about. I sometimes do a bit of meditation when I want to calm, and that makes me think about my breathing. Otherwise I wouldn't. But it's the same with pronunciation. It can really help you to stay calm and focused and think about what you want to say next. Having this time to think about what you're speaking about will make you feel more relaxed. You'll be able to concentrate more and sound even more fantastic than I'm sure you already do. So picture it. So like a visualization exercise, close your eyes, think about what you want to say. This is obviously something you want to do in your own time, not with other people. So you can visualize even the position of your mouth and face. If you may have studied the phonemic chart, You can think about the sounds you're making, how it relates to the English phonemes that make up that chart. Not everybody has learnt that way. And if you're kind of, you know, intermediate and upper intermediate and beyond even, you won't need it if you haven't. But if you have, you might find it helpful to visualize those schwa sounds, etc. Some learners have used like diagrams of mouth and tongue when they really want to go detailed into improving their pronunciation. So looking at their mouth movements, thinking about the shape when making certain sounds. So in order to make them even more correctly. So this is also, yeah, related to getting physical. Pronunciation is a physical skill, you know, sound, but it's physical with our mouth and our lips and our tongue, doing things we're not usually aware of in our native language. So with a new language, you're teaching your mouth a new way to move, and are using different muscles. So, you know, why not watch yourself, notice it, be aware, and focus on any difficult sound, any words and the sounds you find a little bit more difficult, and identify the ones you may have the most difficulty with, and, you know, practice, and watch what your mouth does. If you can see anything else going on, you know, it might seem artificial and strange at first, but, you know, it will help you to make this little bit of difference, I'm sure, the more you do it. So yeah, and then watch yourself again. So that's really kind of paying more attention. Maybe, for example, some people will have trouble with, you know, the TH sound because it changes often. We use it a lot. A little trick I've heard of, you know, put your tongue between your teeth and blow air out of your mouth. Feel the air move over the top of your tongue. So you can practice like words like there, those, thought, think. You can see how my lips are moving and changing. Do this yourself, watching yourself in a mirror, again, on your own. You don't have to feel silly doing it with someone else, or with a friend. You could make it fun. And then, of course, compare what you see yourself doing with a video of a native speaker saying the same thing, if possible, or repeating those words. Again, you can easily find that on the internet. Yeah, try and get it as close as possible to how they're moving their lips. And then, yeah, so leading to copying the experts, so natives or English teachers and professors like myself and Mohammed. So there's no replacement for learning pronunciation from the experts, you know. So listen, which I'm sure you will do, but listen even more, you know, English radio programs, television, movies, imitate what you're hearing. So, you know, and that's, you know, can help accent reduction as well as pronunciation being perfectly correct. Yeah, even if you're not sure what they're saying, if you're not understanding, you know, you're still absorbing it. Fake it until you make it, you might remember, is one of my favorite idioms, which often work. So give that a go if you like. Practicing English alone, as I said, some of those techniques can be on your own. Pronunciation problems can persist because we're afraid of making mistakes. Like I said, if someone's not correcting us, maybe we're also a bit nervous in front of a native speaker, or in a situation with multiple native speakers when you're perhaps the only English learner. So you can create scenarios on your own, you know, in your head, meeting someone from the first time, even writing it down, speaking it out loud, watching yourself in the mirror at the same time if you like. But, you know, all these kind of simple things, ordering at restaurant, asking for directions, many of you are beyond those levels, but, you know, think of simple scenarios or slightly more complex ones, whatever you think your level is. And stay confident. Above all, be confident. So don't be shy, because the first step of learning English is really loving English. And I believe that you all do. So don't be shy. And yeah, and if there's no one watching, you know, you can really work on your confidence there as well. Then find a language buddy. So on the other end of things, if you don't want to work on your own, or you have worked on your own, you also want to work with a friend who's a similar level. You don't want to be, you know, teaching each other any mistakes, but, you know, you may be aware that your body may not be you know, perfect at English either. That's okay. But it's good because you can maybe give each other feedback. Your friend might notice something that you haven't noticed. And that's great, you know, so you can get feedback from each other. And then try, exchanging recorded messages, the WhatsApp recorded facility, or, that's a great way of doing it if you're not face-to-face, or, obviously best maybe face-to-face. So feedback on that with a friend, why not? Perfect. Then, paying attention to intonation and stress. So I've mentioned that before with feedback. Obviously, that's very important, and it depends on often on the word, not just the word, but the context of what you're saying, the tone that you want to get across. So obviously good pronunciation is more than just mastering, getting to grips, really good control of individual sounds. It's, the tone that you want to put across. So think about that stress, the emphasis, where it should go. It's also understanding, intonation, so the rise and fall of the voice, rise and fall, like mine. Some sounds in words, and some words and sentences are louder and clearer than others, and so it's just, again, from listening obviously to more and more native English, that will help you, but just really being aware of it, that's the first step. And then noticing, even if you feel like you're getting it wrong, it doesn't matter, you're noticing it now, and then you'll start to improve little by little. And then I just thought, if you like poems, read some poems, speeches, songs, I'll talk about that as well. And then thinking about where the stress and the intonation lies in that, and why, maybe what point they're trying to make, and that type of thing. Okay, and then sing a song. So this might not be for everybody, not everybody likes to sing, but if you would like to, so you could choose a favorite song of yours, or one that you like. Beatles, as Mohammed mentioned, one of my favorite bands. There's plenty of other great British rock bands, pop singers, all sorts of, American too, Miley Cyrus, all sorts of various singers. So you could choose one perhaps with simple words, lyrics, we call them when they're in a song, and sing along. So, you learn them and then you practice them, and it's a different way, of kind of practicing your pronunciation with song. And as I said, hopefully fun. Obviously, good old YouTube. We say good old because it's been around a while now. You can just go in, as I'm sure you're aware, find numerous songs if you can't think of any. And singing helps you relax. I'm actually in a choir. It's a fun kind of a choir where we sing all sorts of songs, funnily enough, Beatles and rock and pop songs, just online at the moment. But it really helps you relax. So that's important. You want to improve your pronunciation, you don't want to be stressed. So anything that relaxes you, which can also help you get it just that little bit more perfect. And also, of course, the lyrics are already there. You don't need to think about constructing sentences yourself. You don't need to think about the content, as I mentioned. It's all there. You're just thinking about your pronunciation. Okay. And then last of all, have fun with it. Like, you all really love English, I hope so. So try to enjoy these practice tips as much as possible. I'd say, if you want to choose a few that you like the sound of the most, or even give each of them a try if you have the time. But remember, not all of them work for everyone. It's not an instant solution. It can take time, but that's okay. I mean, there's no rush. Most of you are a very good level. You're really just trying to make up extra improvements to your pronunciation. So I would say this is quite important. Set yourself realistic goals. Like, for example, you're all very busy, I'm sure, studying and working maybe too. So like 10-15 minutes per day, or 3 times per week, 10-15 minutes per day, whatever works best for you. So it's important, if you set unrealistic goals, like some people get very excited at the beginning when they think of new techniques, and I'm going to do 2 hours of this and every day, 2 hours, and then maybe you won't, because you haven't got the time, or you're exhausted from other things. So, and then maybe you won't do any of it at all and stop doing it. I know I've had things like that when I've wanted to go running, and I've been like, I'm going to run for an hour and a half every day, and it hasn't happened. It happened for maybe 1 or 2 weeks. After that, I was like, and I wasn't running at all. Instead, I set myself now a target, run 10-15 minutes, 2-3 times a week. If I'm out, I'm usually run a bit longer. If not, at least I've done a bit. So it's called chunking. So chunking is a very important, it's actually a psychological tool which we can apply to English language pronunciation. So yeah, don't challenge yourself too much.
Holly,
Great.
we need
So
examples,
that's
Holly.
pronunciation.
Holly, we need examples of such things as well. We need examples of chunking, if that's possible.
Okay, well, the example I just gave you with obviously running, not to do with pronunciation, but so for example, yeah, like I said, you set yourself, the whole idea is it's chunks, so 10-15 minutes opposed to 2 hours, where a lot of people, because our moods change, we have energy or we don't have energy, and so I mean that's the perfect example, not to give yourself too much and then you won't do it and you'll kind of get disappointed in yourself, unmotivated. So you're chunking things, and it's the same with any of these tips I'm giving you. You give yourself a little task of just doing it. Doesn't have to be every day. You choose the ones you like the most and just spend 10-15 minutes. If you're getting on well with it, you may well go on for 30 minutes. That's great, but at least you've done it, and at least you haven't tried to do 2 hours.
What do you think about the students who have pauses while they're speaking English? Like and I of course you've come across, I think.
Yeah, actually, that's something I'm going to come to in some of my feedback for IELTS.
Pauses.
Yeah, well, just to fill them with more British kind of ways of hesitation devices, we call them. So, for example, I've heard students, your students, use these in the examophone IELTS, because I know there's ones like Yani that you use, naturally.
يعني and برضو in speaking, and you will find people pauses. So we really need your help with that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry for interruption.
Absolutely, yeah. So yeah, I would say obviously learn them, like I said, listen out for them in films, listen out on the radio. People, especially live programs, people, they're not prepared. It's not pre-recorded, so you're going to hear more. But yeah, for sure, these little devices, it's okay, because a lot of, in English, we have times when we don't know what we're going to say, we're thinking, so fill it with a British hesitation device rather. Yeah. And again, just even if you start going into Yani, just automatically just be aware, okay, I said that, next time I'll try not to, I'll try harder. So yeah, so hopefully that makes sense. With the chunking, it's really about realistic goals. Don't set yourself too high challenges. Obviously, yeah, we want to do as much practice as possible, but if you set yourself a small chunk challenge and manage to do more, that is so much better than setting something big and you end up doing nothing because you haven't had the time. So that's really my top tips for pronunciation. So I hope that will help. As I said, it won't, not all of them will work for everyone. Just try out 3 or 4, choose your best ones. If all of them help you, that would be great as well. But everyone's different. Everyone learns in different ways. So yeah, now I'm just going to move on to top tips on improving your speaking in IELTS exams. So not all of you will be doing this, but I understand quite a few of you will. And I myself, I conducted some examophones with students, which I found very useful, very enjoyable, very insightful to kind of figure out, how I can help you, what feedback I can give to help you improve in all the different areas of English speaking. So whether you're planning to do your IELTS or not, these will help you. So thinking about fluency and coherence, very, very important part of speaking English well, of course. So try to avoid repetition. Again, when you're speaking, you're thinking on the spot. You're not only thinking of content, but you're thinking of pronunciation. You're thinking of many things. So, give yourself a break. Again, slow down with it if you can, but do try to avoid repetition. If you ahead of time, try and learn. I know a lot of you know lots of synonyms, similar meaning words. try and have a good kind of catalogue of those in your head, so that when you're speaking, if it is an exam or just to another native speaker or practicing, they will come. So you're not kind of saying the same words over and over again. So yes, and again, to hesitation, as I said, stay confident. If you hesitate, exactly, use these English hesitation devices, or fillers, we call them as well. So if you think of it's like fills a kind of gap in your speech, which is perfectly natural in all languages. So just stick to the British ones. And then of course, if you notice a mistake when speaking, it's fine to self-correct as well. So but the main thing is, do not let that affect your confidence, because it's very easy. You think, I've made a mistake, you self-correct, brilliant. It's better to self-correct than to leave the mistake. Self-correct and then just pretend it didn't happen. Don't let it affect your confidence. That's very important. And then thinking about, again, a calm pace, so that your speech becomes more coherent and fluid and connected. So I would say, I noticed with the examophones, students wanting to use long sentences to prove, and demonstrate a lot of their vocabulary and very good grammar, and that's great. But sometimes, again, I realize they know the grammar, but they're rushing it, or they're a bit nervous, and the longer sentences aren't helping that. So, don't be afraid of using shorter sentences or shorter phrases. When we speak, we use a mix, just like when we're in anything that we're writing. So it doesn't have to be a long, complicated spoken sentence in order to be the best way of saying something. And again, another thing I noticed, really, practice using a range of connectives and conjunctions. So this will again add to your flow and the coherence of what you're saying in English. So I'm sure you're all aware of many of them at the moment. Finally, then, because, or very simple, luckily, alternatively, and in addition. If you feel like you'd have a kind of a pile of them that you use over and over again, and then maybe try and look up some more, because there are many, you can read about or find on the internet. And again, it just adds to that flow and coherence. And again, avoids repetition. Okay, so lexical resource, very important. So this is vocabulary. So no matter what level you are, if you do consider yourself to be, advanced, there are actually more English words you can learn. There's more English words I can probably learn, very academic ones that I probably don't use. So, if you're at that stage where you feel like your vocabulary is really strong, what you can still add to it more. Why not? Or if you're more kind of intermediate level, then yes, definitely you would be needing to kind of add some more vocabulary to your resource, so you can kind of dip in and out, and when you're speaking, you don't have to think too much, you know the words well. So having an expansive, very interesting, mixed, eclectic, that's like a mixture of different types of words, will always help your speaking and ensure the listener is also really engaged, because obviously you want to impress the examiner, any teachers that you have. You really want to impress them and make sure that they're really listening and enjoying and understanding what you're saying. Then you can also, obviously, to find online, obviously you can find many websites with slightly more academic or slightly longer words, slightly more complicated words, if that's what you feel like you're lacking. Or you could just read more in English and try different texts. If you're used to reading the news a lot, or certain types of books or academic journals, maybe try and read a fictional book instead, a story. For, I don't know, Harry Potter. I mean, these even children's books, they're written in a more simple way. And even if you feel like your level's, higher, it can still help you. There's still some good vocabulary in there. Or, for example, to make yourself more engaged in this practice, your favorite actors or singers, you can read their biographies. I'm quite a fan, for example, of really old Hollywood films. And so I have read biographies, and any reading, you're always going to pick up every now and again a new word. You don't know what it is. If you're reading, you just jot it down, or even in your phone, you can come back to it later to check you really understand the meaning, or look it up at the time if you don't mind disturbing your reading. And then the same obviously with films and listening on the radio, whatever you're listening to, podcasts, you know, you're going to every now and again hear maybe a new word. So if you don't have time, jot it down, come back to it later. The main thing is you jot it down, and then you're like, yeah, you'll learn it properly when you have the time. So yeah, so perfect. And then bit more on lexical resource. Yes, idioms. I know you all like your idioms. I do as well. So saying, I thought I'd give you a few more idioms. I know you know a lot of them already. To kill two birds with one stone. I'm not sure if anyone knows that, but that's to be able to do two things at the same time, almost like multitasking. Up in the air, that means when things haven't been decided, maybe you're making a plan with someone, so you're not sure for whatever reason, things are still up in the air. Hit the hay, you may know that's when you're really tired, you want to go to bed, exhausted. We say that a lot.
So
the ball's in your court, somebody else is yours.
Sorry to interrupt. So we don't have to use lots of idioms, maybe in the exam 3 to 4, maybe maximum 5. Overusing idioms among native speakers is not acceptable, isn't it?
Yeah, of course. I would say, yeah, don't just use idioms. No. But I'm just saying to add to your resource, you know, because I noticed from the examophones, a lot of the students were using the same ones kind of each time. So I feel like they know kind of 3 or 4 or 5 pretty well, and they'll use them. So obviously just learn a few more, because there's obviously very different meanings
for the life, not for the exam.
Yeah, well, for the exam, I mean, they were coming out with them in the IELTS speaking practice. So I think it's fine to have, you know, maybe think 3 or 4 over the whole exam maximum.
3 to 4 maximum. Okay.
Yeah, all I'm saying is you can add to your resource.
New knowledge, yes. Okay, one more thing. Is it important to speak American or British accent in this IELTS exam, or it doesn't really matter?
Well, I would say, I mean, obviously, I think students have obviously already established their accent if they're kind of intermediate or upper intermediate. Obviously the British accent seems to be the one that you will want to learn, and I would recommend. But, you know, if you've watched a lot of American films played on the American stations, you're going to sound a bit American. That's okay. And like I said, the American accent is clear. But, you know, if you were to have a native examiner, they're not going to not understand you, as long as you're speaking clearly, and everything else that we've discussed is good. So, you know, I wouldn't, it's possible obviously to change your accent a little bit more from American to British if you want, if you're at that high level, I would say, but I wouldn't worry too much. Your accent's developing, whether it's English, British or American. So I think both are fine, really. So yeah. Yes, the examiner will, insert on some excellent grasp you have. So yeah, just back to adding to your resource, whether it's vocabulary or idioms, expressions, phrasal verbs as well. There was a lot of great usage of phrasal verbs. Again, sometimes, and I'm going to come on to this next with grammar, because it's a little preposition attached to a verb, or then it's so easy to get it wrong and for the meaning to change totally. So just be really confident and practice your phrasal verbs. Go over the ones that you feel like you know, check you really do know the meanings. Some phrasal verbs have more than one meaning. Often they have a physical and a non-physical meaning. Sometimes they literally have a totally different meaning that's non-physical as well. So you need to be really, you know, clear on that before you use them. So during the examophones, I did notice a lot of great usage, but also some that was a little bit out. So I would say phrasal verbs, yeah, you just need to practice, and there's no rules, I know, really, with the in, whether it's in, on, of, you know, for example, you know, to break in, to break up with someone, to break into, to break over, to break in shoes rather than break into a house. There's all these different ones that, yeah, can get confusing. So really try and study up on those. So yes, grammatical range and accuracy. Intermediate and upper students, yeah, and whichever level you are, you're going to have a great understanding of English grammar by now, I'm sure. But it's always easy, as I said, we know, in speaking exams on the spot, you know, I've been surprised, or not surprised, but I've, you know, on the spot, sometimes you can forget, or you're, again, maybe rushing a little bit. So tenses are definitely one of the things I'll come to. So make sure you keep on top of your grammar, basically. Any areas in particular that you think you might have a weakness with, you know, you concentrate on those. But the ones that I noticed the most were, again, back to prepositions. They're such little words and articles. Little words, but they're very important. You know, you want to sound as, you know, as the best possible in English, and they do matter to examiners. You can still be understood, and that's one of the reasons that even advanced learners kind of struggle with them, because again, they're often not corrected. People still understand you if you use the wrong article or an article when you shouldn't, or the wrong preposition, but really try and work on those. And again, that's from practice.
You mean that sometimes students make few mistakes and still hit band 7? Few grammatical mistakes.
Well, yeah, I would say, you know, yes, they could be at a band, you know, 6.5, 7, and still making these little mistakes. But the point is that they're making them still because nobody's corrected them, because it's easy to understand. Even if you get a preposition or an article wrong, you can still understand. Whereas if you get a whole word or a grammar sentence wrong, you know, you'd be asked to repeat.
You mean that the mistakes do not hinder the whole process of communication?
They don't, exactly, but we want everyone to be as perfect as possible. Yes, so I'm saying, even though little words, that's the reason probably people make them at advanced levels, because they're not corrected, they're understood. But yeah, I would say keep working on them. If you feel your upper intermediate advanced level, keep working on them. And then sometimes, as we know, there's rules, sometimes there's, exceptions.
Would like to take questions at the end of the presentation today. To take questions.
Yep, absolutely. We're doing, we've got another 5-10 minutes or so, and then no problem at all. So yeah, articles and prepositions are the little words that I noticed the most when conducting my examophones. And tiny words, but let's get your accuracy as good as possible. And then tenses, especially past tense, I would say, as you're probably all aware, you know, we've got so many tenses: simple past, present perfect, past perfect continuous, present perfect continuous, many different ones. It's easy to confuse them, even if you know the grammar, you know your grammar well, but when you're speaking, you know, it's on the spot. Just practice, because I would definitely feedback that happened during some of the examophones, and I knew the students were aware of the grammar. It's just, in speaking exams, you don't have the time, and you're maybe a little bit more nervous. So keep practicing those, you know, keep practicing them when you speak, keep practicing with your written. When you're reading, if you notice them, think, oh yes, I know that's why the author used this tense, you know. That's, I think those tenses are the most difficult. The present, the future tenses tend to be much easier because there are fewer of them. One present tense, 2 ways of saying the future. So I think you're all pretty good in that. Okay, and then lastly, yes, pronunciation, just to kind of reiterate my earlier tips, really. So from what I've said, from listening to yourself, slowing down, I can't say that enough when you're really trying to work on your pronunciation. Picturing it, watching your lips, getting physical, you know, all those type of things, and then watching yourself in the mirror, finding fun ways to do it. Maybe it's a song or a poem, you know, get creative so it's not such a chore. And and then absolutely you'll absolutely do great, and your pronunciation will improve with flying colors. Okay, so I'm now ready to take some questions. If you would like, in the chat, I think I can see mistakes.
So let me help you with the questions. The first question: is there a minimum number of grammatical mistakes that we can make during the speaking exams?
I'm not sure of the exact number. I think it varies. I think the from my understanding, the examiners, you know, it's to their discretion. And it really depends obviously on other aspects.
Thank you. It depends on the type of mistakes. It depends on the type of mistakes. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. It depends on the type. I don't think they count. I mean, there'll be obviously if you're making like, you know, 10, 15, that's going to be, you know, try not to for sure. And it's going to bring you your band down.
We usually say 2 to 3 mistakes, minimum mistakes. That's okay. But if you mix up tenses can change the meaning.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Concerning the pronunciation of the sound P, like people and all that, are there any tips to, you know, because most of Arabs pronounce the P and mix it with B. So what's your advice?
Well, okay, I'd start with a very simple advice, which is literally go back to the basics. So, you know, write yourself a list of words beginning with P, write yourself a list of words beginning with B, obviously best words that you use the most often. And literally we call it drilling. You just practice saying them. So, you know, like whether it's P for, you know, P for Paul, for a name, Pat. And the same with B, bell, you drill it. You say it over and over and over again. And then
so you repeat.
And then again, record yourself. That would be perfect. So you can hear yourself as well. Really hear the difference and go back and forth as many times as you need to, even if it feels like, you know, it's basic kid stuff. It's not. It's important. P and B do sound similar. I mean, when we're English people are speaking, for example, on the telephone with people, we have to use phonetics, you know, for example, my surname is always heard wrong. The S sounds like an F. I think that's another mistake it's easy for Arabs to make, I've heard. So S for Sierra, F for Foxtrot, you know. So really drill it and choose words that, you know, like I said, you will use a lot, and record yourself.
So once again, drilling means repeating the same sound.
Yeah.
So every morning when you wake up in the morning and you listen to the BBC and you listen to something like, for example, practical, people, you keep repeating, people, practical people. And sometimes people do something called tongue twisters. Yeah. Like the boy plays with the ball in the park. So ba, pa, you see? And this actually improves. Okay, is it okay for students in the IELTS exam to correct themselves if they make any grammatical mistakes? Instant correction? Self-correction is acceptable?
I would say so. Like I said earlier, you know, if you've made a mistake, you realize it in time, you know, straight away, don't go back if you've moved forward with what you're saying. But if you've quick self correction is, I think, is great, because it proves to the examiner, you know, you've corrected yourself. And like I said before, just don't let it affect your confidence. Don't be nervous because you made a mistake. But however, if you've moved on to what you're saying next, don't go back, no, because that's a waste of time, and it's, you know, it's probably make you feel nervous and get confused with what you've, you know, moved on to saying. So if it's instant,
Okay, how to deal with unpredictable questions that are even challenging in Arabic?
Well, exactly. Even for anyone, unpredictable questions, you know, stay calm. My number one golden rule, stay calm. You know, think about, I mean, you may want to think about if it's an exam situation, if we're talking about IELTS, what the examiner might want to hear, as in, you know, they'll want to hear a range of things that you're able to say, vocabulary, you know, so try and keep it as kind of interesting as possible. If you're really not sure what to say, you can say that, you know, say, oh, that's an unpredictable question, that's interesting, that's really got me thinking, you know, I could, and then maybe give a couple of options if you're not sure what you would answer. You know, again, you're proving your speech. That's the main thing, really. So you don't need to be, we say, thrown by a question. If a question takes you by surprise, don't let it throw you. Don't let it throw your confidence and, you know, the fact that you're going to carry on demonstrating your English regardless. you know, they might do that. We call it a curveball as well. Throw in a curveball question. That's slightly American term, but we use it in England as well. So yeah.
Okay. Someone is asking you, do we have to use complex sentences? Because in my courses, I never talk about complex. So they're asking you about the complex sentences. Do they have to use a variety of sentence structures in IELTS speaking?
I think if you can correctly, and you know, you feel confident doing so, of course. I understand that you don't have to, and I've mentioned that obviously with regards earlier to the short or long kind of sentences and phrases. It's certainly better for the advanced level if you want to get up to 8 even. Yeah,
because some students here want to travel to the Congo and to Ethiopia to help in you know, in building the Renaissance Dam, so they need only band 3. So they don't have to use complex sentences. Yeah. However, if you really need to travel to the UK and meet Holly, for God's sake, use complex sentences.
Yeah, it will help your grade. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. You know, sorry
practice.
About the interruption. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I would say, yeah, obviously if you can, and you know, even if, you know, you give it a try and it's slightly wrong, again, like, you know, Mohammed said, you're allowed 2 or 3 mistakes. It's better to get a few in if you are going for those higher bands. Okay. You know,
how to think in English? What's the best solution? To marry an English woman or an Englishman, or what?
Probably, well, just because you'd learn it the most, it would be surrounding you. But well, I mean, thinking in English, you know, it comes from fluency and being very, you know, a high level of English, because, you know, I'm a language learner myself. I actually studied French and Italian. So I have done both processes, obviously, learning to be a teacher of English and then learning languages as second and third language, my Italian and French, second and third. So I know how tricky it can be, how difficult it can be to think in the language. And usually you don't. It takes a while. You translate in your head. So you're not thinking in the language, and then you speak. So you're taking time. But again, it's just practicing, you know, the higher level you get. I'd say by band 8, you should be really thinking in English pretty quickly. You know, the translation process may still be happening, but it's so quick.
Yeah. Someone is asking you, in speaking, should we sound formal or informal? Because I've never mentioned that in my courses. So in speaking, should we be formal or informal?
Well, it depends on the context. It depends on the occasion. I mean, in IELTS, obviously, it's probably better. It is better to be formal. However, if a question is quite a casual one, you know, about what you like to do in your free time, there's nothing wrong with using a more informal tone. I'd avoid slang. You know,
yeah, avoid slang.
Obviously, yes. If you're chatting to you've moved already to Canada or the UK, you can try that out a bit, but I would avoid it. If unsure, go with the formal, if unsure. So, but there's nothing wrong with a bit of informal.
But not slang? You mean not slang?
Not slang, no. Because obviously we have words that are, you know, yeah, exactly, they're more formal.
Of course, unacceptable.
Register and less. But slang, yeah, with slang, I'd stay away from it until you're really at 8 or 9 and you've got friends that are English speaking natives, and, you know, because yeah.
Okay, one last thing. Someone is telling you, I've got a terrible accent. How can I improve my accent? Someone said that. Okay. I've got a terrible accent.
Oh, I'm sure it's not that bad, but yes, you know, we all understand. So again, I mean, you know, to think back on the things I've suggested, obviously listening, you know, I don't know how much time you've got, but, you know, listening to native English, you know, you to make your choice if it's British or American. You know, if you're planning to move to America, of course, I would say maybe focus on that more. Listen.
Okay, but what matters the most is that her English has to be understandable. So if your English is understandable and easy to understand, I think that's no problem. There's nothing called terrible English.
No, right? Exactly. You can have an accent and still speak amazing English. And I've met many people in the UK with accents, but yeah, they don't hinder us being able to understand them. So they don't need to really work on them. So,
thank you.
You know,
a gentleman here has always been in love with the American accent until this session. he has fallen in love with the British accent. So he's saying, how can I shift from the American to the British? Okay, you know, it's not a big deal, actually. I don't know. You know, the problem is that all students of English are obsessed with the idea of American and British, and they don't know at the end of the day, what matters is that your English is easy to understand, and that's it.
Yeah, you just want to be able to be coherent and fluent and understood. But of course, you know, accent, you know, work on it. Like, as I said, you know, if you want to make a switch, it's not, if you've got to a high level, say band 8 with an American accent, it is going to be a bit harder to suddenly have a British accent. But, you know, little by little, if you were to live in the UK, you'd start developing it, just listening again, films, British radio. The more you listen, record yourself, you know, copying a British accent. That's the way to do it. But it may take longer the better you are at English.
Okay. Someone else is asking about how can I use advanced vocabulary in speaking? Can we use advanced vocabulary? How can we use advanced words in speaking?
Well, I mean, again, it depends on the context, you know, and again, going back to what I said about trying not to overcomplicate your sentences. I know you want, I felt that in the exam friends, people wanting to, you know, not to show off, but demonstrate that they know these complicated words, you know, and it can be tricky because they can sound out of place. You know, again, you have to just judge what you're talking about. You know, if it's quite a serious subject, you know, more academic subject, more a thinking subject rather than a casual conversation subject, then yeah, by all means try and use these more complicated words.
I'll tell you something. Sometimes I just give them a very nice tip of having 5 words that can be used in different contexts, you know. I know it's not very academic according to the Western level of education, but sometimes I just try to provide them, instead of providing them with advanced vocabulary for each topic, we can say something, for example, something like, you know, off the top of my head, I'd like to tell you something about. So I'd like to provide them with expressions that can be used neutrally, not to a specific topic. I know that might sound weird to you, but this is not weird according to the education that we've come from, the background, that sometimes we can have 5, 6 words that fit in different situations.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously they have to fit otherwise. But no, I think, and also I think that's a good idea because also it helps improve confidence, which is so important. Yes. It really does, because then
thank you very much, Holly. Holly, you mentioned confidence. Do you think memorizing chunks, like memorizing vocabulary, sentences, like example, like if you want my honest opinion, I can say that, you know, when it comes to, so when we memorize such words, don't you think this provides the student with the confidence and the time to come up with the ideas?
Definitely. That's, yeah, absolutely. Going back to vocabulary, you know, the greater your vocabulary resource, your lexical range, you know, you're more, you know, it doesn't mean you're going to use it all in an exam or when you're speaking, but you've got it there. And again, the confidence is going to make you more relaxed. You know, it's there. Synonyms, like I said, to avoid repetition, that is important. They don't want too much repetition. Good, you know, or other words that get repeated.
You don't mind students memorizing chunks of vocabulary if they use them properly.
Exactly. And then obviously writing practice sentences when they've memorized 10 new words and they're a bit more complex, you know, write 10 sentences that if possible can relate to something in your life or something you're interested in, and you know, then you're even more prepared.
Okay, we've got 10 more minutes. And I'd like to ask you about the most important idiomatic expressions. Okay, we've got another question here in part 2 speaking. When I speak in part 2 speaking, do I go on speaking until the examiner stops me, or I simply stop myself?
I think it's I think you can go on until, you know, Yeah, it's definitely good to speak longer than shorter, of course, I would say. But you don't want to be rambling, ramble and on and on and on.
Rambling would definitely affect the score. Yes.
Yeah, but I think an examiner cutting in it can be because you've got so much to say, correct? You're demonstrating it, so they're not going to mark you down for that. No, it's really just if you're kind of rambling and saying the same thing over and over again just to fill space, then that might not come across so well.
The student speaks until the examiner stops him.
I would say so, but it won't always happen like that. There may, things as you're thinking on your top, top of your head of what you're going to say, you might come to a natural end of a sentence and what you've been talking about, and then the examiner goes, okay.
So the examiner will definitely interrupt you guys because the examiner checks his stopwatch.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, there'll be exactly the examiner, as you should as well, obviously be aware of the time. They'll be extra aware of the time. So if you go over that time, they will step in. So obviously try and make sure you're rounding up, finishing what you're saying, so it doesn't cut you at half sentence and you complete it.
Holly, I want to ask you, if I speak now with my natural English and I say, when it comes to reading, I'm not very much into reading because I don't have enough time. Do you think my pace is slow or natural? If I say, I'm not very much into reading because, what do you think about my pace? Is that natural or slow?
I would say it's a bit slower than natural. I would say it's a bit, but it's clear. And if you were unsure about using, I'm not much into, that's not, that's a very British expression not everybody knows, and you want to check you're using it properly. Like I said, if you're unsure of what you're using at the time.
Yeah, you want to have
time is okay. To think. Yeah, but generally a little bit slow. That was a bit slower than
can you tell me, if I speak a little bit slowly to have more time to come up with ideas, do you think this is acceptable?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm going now to ask you a question as if I'm the examiner and you're the examinee. And that question could be difficult, and I want you to act as if you're coming up with ideas, okay?
Okay.
So I'm going to ask you a question now, like, do you think robots will play the role of, will take over many jobs in the future?
So yes, I have to say that I do think that, and I think there's pros and cons to that. There's certainly and positives and negatives. So a positive would be there might be more job creations in other ways, creating machines, robots, finding faster and cheaper ways for companies to operate. A negative would be job losses, machines taking over paid roles for people.
And do you think that people will have enough time to read in the future?
And enough time to read, as in read books and rather than read things on their phone, or?
Yeah, reading in general.
In general, well, I think people more and more, obviously our phones and our computers, have taken over, and the pandemic has made that ever more so. We're very reliant on them, and they're great. A learning tool, of course, connector. But we should read books too. Yeah. I think a lot of people are going back to the old days. Let's not forget about hard copy books.
So anyway, my students here are laughing, and they're saying that even with tough questions, you don't stop. And you're speaking non-stop because she's band 9, for God's sake, she's band 9, a native speaker. Yeah, they're telling you, please give yourself some time to think as if you are a non-native, for God's sake.
Okay. So yeah, it's true. I haven't role played as a student before with IELTS.
Let's do that role play. So once again, what you said is that sometimes you can have some time to think, come up with ideas at the beginning by saying, let me think. Do you think? So, yeah. So do you use such expressions like, okay, let me think, I'm not sure. Okay. So you think sometimes you use such expressions at the beginning?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, going back to the fillers and the devices, you know, the and the R's is fine. But then also, yeah, oh, that's an interesting question. That gives you time to think. Oh, I'll have a think about that. That is really intriguing. Have words like that ready as well. So to show that you are thinking, nothing wrong with saying I just need a few seconds to think about that.
Okay, someone is asking you, is it okay to use okay? To use okay in speaking exams?
Yeah, to use the word okay.
Yeah, is it okay to use the word okay in the speaking exam?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. That's
Okay.
not considered slang. That's informal. It's
That's informal, yes. That's no problem, yes. Okay. Someone is asking you, have you ever taken the IELTS exam before? In case you need any courses, I'm ready to help you. Holly, okay, one last question. Yeah, this card, that was simply a silly joke from my side. Okay. So once again, let me ask you straight away, what are the 5 top tips you give to students in IELTS speaking? 5 top tips.
5 top tips. Okay, so as we went before, you know, accuracy, really work on that, you know, going back over whether it's grammar, vocabulary, pronunciation, accuracy, fluency as well. You know, you want to make sure you're using your connectives, your determiners all very well. That's going to connect it all. So okay. Accuracy, fluency, grammar, of course, as I
grammar
said,
is important.
Really important. Even if you think you know it and you just go about practice speaking with it, practice try and speak quickly with it, see if you can keep up with it and get it correct still, but slow down in the exam. And then obviously lexical, so yeah, vocabulary and absolutely all of that, and pronunciation.
Okay. Someone else asking you, what do you mean by grammatical accuracy? It means to be grammatically correct with no mistakes.
Yeah, with no mistakes.
Okay, is it okay? Someone here is asking you, is it okay to use body language in the speaking exam, or you should not use your hands and you should be like a robot? What do you think?
Oh, I think body language is good. I mean, you may have noticed me, we call it gesticulating, which I'm sure some of you know, the verb to gesticulate, using gestures. I've been using them, you know, to explain, and it adds confidence to what you say, emphasis, absolutely. But you don't have to if you don't feel like you have to, but if you want to and you're confident doing it, it will. Yeah,
okay. In the speaking exam, if I don't understand or I couldn't hear the question, can I ask the examiner to rephrase himself or herself? Can I do that?
Yes. Oh gosh, of course. Yes. Otherwise, you're going to try blindly to answer a question you don't understand. No, there's nothing saying.
Cool.
Sorry, could you mind rephrasing and practice that question? How you say that as well. Please, do you mind repeating? Please rephrase. That's saying rephrase is a good verb itself.
Okay. What's the best way to practice sentence structure? Sorry, not sentence structure. Sentence stress.
Sentence stress. Well, again, obviously that's a real speaking thing. So it will be both listening to other people, native, so myself, or in films, radio, the usual podcasts, listening for the stress. You can test yourself. There's websites, I believe, where you can kind of test yourself, or just listen to something and you underline in your head where you think that is. And then obviously yourself when you're speaking, like record yourself and then listen to yourself. Oh, where did I put the stress? Where did I put the emphasis or the intonation?
Okay, if I do not understand the question and I ask the examiner to rephrase himself, will that affect my band?
Well, again, it depends how well you do with the rest of the exam.
If I keep repeating, myself.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't understand a second time, obviously, yeah, that is going to affect it a little bit. But it's so important that you understand the question. Otherwise, you're going to talk about something completely different, and that's worse. So, yeah.
Someone is asking if I answer the examiner by saying, I have no idea with every question. I have no idea. Mafi ma'lum, haza mafi kalam. No idea. No understand. Do you think one day he'll get a band or any score, for God's sake? If I keep repeating, I have no idea. I have no idea. Of course, if you keep telling anybody, I have no idea.
It's like saying no comment if you're being interviewed.
Yeah, of course. This means you're band one. Band one means you're going back home, traveling back home. So once again, thank you very much, Holly. Holly, can you hear me? Holly. Holly. Holly, can you hear me? Hello? Can you hear me, Holly? Hello? Are you connected?
Yeah, absolutely. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Oh, you guys frozen? I'm here.
Okay, thank you very much, Holly. Thank you. Can you, okay. I hope now you can. Okay, really, thank you very much, Holly. Okay, one last thing before you go. Thank you. Just one last thing. What if I provide them with speaking partners? They speak with them all the time. WhatsApp groups where they can do voice notes. Do you think that will help them?
Yes, I do. I think that's very helpful. Like I said, with getting a buddy, obviously it's support, you know, try and obviously get people at the same level, you know, that's very important. And also remind them that, you know, their peers, the other students may also be making mistakes. So not to kind of try and learn too much from them, be aware. You may be able to learn from each other and you hopefully will, but not always. So just be aware of that as a pitfall. You don't want to learn another person's mistake. So, but yeah,
once again, it's a good idea. So you think it's a brilliant idea to have fluency partners, speak with, to get rid of pauses, right?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. Are there any websites that you recommend for speaking or applications?
I'd have to get back to you on that. I mean, there's so many that the British Council,
BBC.
BBC News, The Guardian for reading. There's all sorts.
Okay, how long does it take to shift to the American accent? To the British accent?
Even YouTube channels. It's kind of like this again, the question going back again to the British accent, you know, there's no, how long is a piece of string? If you know that phrase, it can take time. If you're advanced, it will take longer because you've learned a particular way of speaking, an accent. If you're a beginner, to another is tricky. It can take time, but you know, the more you listen, you're going to American natives on YouTube, however, and repeat them. If if you're really determined to do that, it will happen.
Really, thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Holly.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. It's now 1 hour exactly. Thank you for your time. We really appreciate it. Holly, we want you to be among the speaking examiners in the follow-up course. Can we have you in the follow-up course? I'm providing a follow-up for 2 weeks. Can you join us?
Yes, of course.
Thank you. We'll be waiting for you. Looking forward to having you on board with us once again among the speaking examiners. Thank you, and a big thank you goes to everybody who has joined the session. Thank you very much indeed, and hopefully we can work on fluency by listening, drilling, repeating, and then having speaking examinations, speaking partners. Right, Holly, please, once again.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And I'll see you in a bit, okay?
Yes, okay. I'll see you in a bit. Bye-bye, everybody.
Take it easy.
Inshallah. Bye-bye.